The Los Angeles Clippers are set to face off against the Phoenix Suns in a best-of-7 series in the first round of the Western Conference. Now, although Phoenix may be ranked 4th in the West, they may as well be the most talented team in the NBA. And with Paul George set to miss most of, if not the entire first round due to injury, the odds are looking heavily stacked against the Los Angeles Clippers to make it to the championship, let alone out of the first round. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. So to kick things off, let's break down this first round matchup. You see, the Phoenix Suns are going to heavily be relying on their quartet of players, their core four, in DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and the new addition of Kevin Durant, one of the most talented players in the NBA. Now, the only flaw that this team seems to have is that there may not be too much chemistry there, because although Kevin Durant was acquired mid-February in a trade, he's only played in 8 games for the Phoenix Suns due to injuries he's obtained. And in those 8 games, although it hasn't been many, the Phoenix Suns are unbeaten. They are undefeated with Kevin Durant on the court. But honestly, I think Kevin Durant put it best when he said this: chemistry matters. Being on the same page with your team matters. In a perfect world, I would have loved to play more than 8 games with this team. But I've just got to rest on me playing 1,000 games in the NBA. I'll figure it out. And so basically that's what the Phoenix Suns are going to have to do. They're just going to have to figure it out and roll with it. But honestly, it shouldn't be too much of a challenge for this Phoenix Suns team, because the core that they've had have been together for a while, and they've found some success. In fact, this Phoenix Suns team made the playoffs 2 years ago and went all the way to the NBA Finals. And of course, they would go on to lose against the Milwaukee Bucks, right? But they know what it takes to win the Western Conference and, dominate along the way. So with the addition of Kevin Durant, that whole process should honestly be a little bit easier. Now, as for the LA Clippers, where do they stand? Well, this Clippers team is back in the playoffs after being bounced in the play-in tournament just a year ago. And this talented roster includes the likes of a former MVP in Russell Westbrook, a 2-time Finals MVP in Kawhi Leonard, and strong role players like Nicholas Batum, Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubac. Now, this depth is important because while this team does have superstars, those superstars have rarely managed to stay healthy in this team's tenure. In fact, Paul George is currently out right now with a right knee sprain. But if any team were equipped to handle a superstar going down, it would be the Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, one of their greatest strengths is the amount of depth this team has. They could roll out a starting 10 if they wanted to. Let's keep it a buck. And since we're keeping it a buck, I think it's time to get to the focus of the video. And that's the fact that this Clippers team, has the most amount of pressure heading into this year's playoffs to just win. I'm not talking win in the first round and beat the Phoenix Suns. I'm talking win it all. This team needs to do it this year, or we might just be looking at a rebuild, which the Clippers can't afford to have happen. I mean, they traded away their entire future to make sure that this team was built. Most of that went to the Oklahoma City Thunder after they gave up a lot of picks in the acquisition of Paul George. Why did they acquire Paul George? Because Kawhi only came to the Clippers to play with Paul George. So this team put all their chips on the table for the duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to win a championship. Now, these two have been together for the past 4 seasons, if you count this year, with this being the 3rd season that Ty Lue has been their head coach. Now, why haven't the Clippers figured it out? Why haven't they figured out how to reach the finals yet? Well, that's mainly been in part due to injuries. I mean, last season, the Clippers missed the playoffs entirely, mainly because Kawhi Leonard was out the whole year, and Paul George only played in 30 games. So there wasn't much from their 2 superstars, meaning that it would have been really hard, and it was, to make the playoffs, which they didn't. And the year before that, the team had some success, don't get me wrong. I mean, both superstars still only played like 50 games, but they were there more often, and they made it all the way to the conference finals. Now, they took the Suns to 6 games, and in that Western Conference Finals matchup, Kawhi Leonard played in 0 of those games. Paul George was there for every single one of them, but Kawhi wasn't. And if Kawhi had been playing versus Suns, honestly, we could have seen a Clippers-Bucks Finals instead of a Suns-Bucks Finals. but he wasn't there. So that's how the last 2 seasons have gone. And the first season this duo was together, COVID hit, which meant that their playoff series would take place in the bubble, the COVID 2020 bubble, where teams all went to Orlando, isolated. It was completely different basketball. And that might have been what threw off the Clippers team. I mean, they just weren't built for the bubble. And this was their first year together, so not reaching the finals, it was a bit disappointing, but not unexpected. This was the first year the duo was together. They were both healthy, though. This was like the only season that they haven't been injured. And they just straight up lost to the Nuggets, and I'm pretty sure they blew a huge, I think it was a 3-1 lead in the series, ended up losing in 7 games to the Nuggets. The Nuggets, I think, came back 3-1 in 2 different series that year, which is also crazy. But that's basically been the Kawhi PG saga. And with this being their 4th year together, if they can't figure it out, let alone can't make it out the first round, the Clippers might be looking at a rebuild. Maybe not this year, maybe not next, but it's coming. This rebuild is coming, especially if the Clippers cannot find success. I mean, they've found superstars, but the problem is it's hard to rely on these superstars when they're never healthy. Let's be real. This team has basically had 4 chances, with this being their 4th. And if they can't figure it out now, Steve Ballmer might just have to call it wraps. Especially with the new stadium coming along, he might want to have something new, I mean, I'm sure he loves PG Kawhi. He probably loves him, anti-Lou. But they just can't find success as a trio. So, this might just be the end of an era in LA. Alright, that's all I wanted to say. Catch y'all next time. Much love. Deuces.